Hello, lovelies, and welcome back to An Angel's Life of Bookish Goodness. Today, I wanted to kind of do a more in-depth dive into Fire's Love by Alex E. Carey. I posted my review on the blog on Wednesday, but I felt like there was so much more that I wanted to say about the book, and I couldn't cover it all in one little blog review, book review. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to kind of talk about the book. And for those of you who haven't seen the review on my blog, I'll put that in the links down below so that you can check that out. One of the things I talked about, I thought that the book was an urban fantasy, but after reading it, I'm inclined to say that it's probably more of a paranormal romance. I don't read a whole lot of romance, period. It's kind of a thing I'm known for. I'm working on it, though. I do want to expand my reading preferences. But one of the reasons that I don't read a lot of romance is that what romance I've tried to read in the past, when the whole story is about the relationship, I feel like things get contrived to make problems in the relationship, and then because of a lack of communication, it just makes things worse. And it's not at all true to my experience with having relationships and my experience in life. And I know it's fantasy in its own way, and so it's not completely based on reality. But for me, I guess because I'm very happy with my love life, I would never want relationships like that. They would be so frustrating. What I consider the difference between urban fantasy and paranormal romance, to me, urban fantasy would be the Vampire Academy series. So the Vampire Academy series, there is romance, absolutely, lots of romance, but the story isn't about the romance. The story is about protecting the Dragomir princess, and it's about Rose's goals of becoming a trained fighter so that she can protect her best friend. It's not about the relationship. The relationship just ends up happening while everyday life is happening as they go along. Whereas with Twilight, the story is about the relationship. If you take away the relationship, there is no story. And yeah, there's all this stuff happens, but all this stuff happens because they're in the relationship. Whereas with the Vampire Academies, it's, if you took out the relationship, other than like later in the books when he turns into a Strigoi and that whole story arc happens, the story really wouldn't change that much if you took the relationship out of it, right? So to me, that's the difference between urban fantasy and paranormal romance. Using that as the gauge, the reason that I consider A Fire's Love to be more paranormal romance is because the story really is about the relationship. And if you take the relationship out of the story, there isn't really a story. There's hints at a story. There's things that make you think that might be more going on. But one of the reasons that I loved this, even though it's paranormal romance and it's not really my thing, is that I finally found a girl that I can relate to in a romance story, which is amazing because I loved Vampire Academies because I love Rose Hathaway. Hands down. That's the reason I love the series. With this, the main character, Kira, she's not Rose, but she is a tough girl. She's independent. She was orphaned when she was a fairly young girl. Her mother and her brother were killed in an accident, and her dad just abandoned her. So she's kind of had to grow up from 10 to 16 when the book happens, and she goes off to college. And she's been pretty much on her own from 10 to 16. And then she's going off to college, and so the story is kind of about her going off to college, but then it becomes all about her meeting her new best friend, Lowell, who she finds out is a demon. And she finds out that he is a demon character called Ulrich the Wolf. And this demon character is someone that she learned about from a book that she got from her parents. So there's a hint that there's more to her story there, but they don't give a whole lot away. And then Ulrich kind of is falling in love with her, but he has a love lost issue. So there's that whole love lost issue in the story, which they don't make it overwhelmingly obnoxious. And I really appreciated that. And then he introduces her to one of his best friends, Pyre, who is also a demon. And Pyre and Kira have insta-love. But their insta-love isn't obnoxious. It's sort of like they're automatically drawn to each other. And I can relate to that because that's how I felt when I met my husband. He and I are actually very different personalities. He's nothing like anybody I'd ever dated before. I'm nothing like anybody he's ever dated before. But I just knew from the moment that I met him. And I remember thinking, crap, this is not in my 5-year plan to get in a relationship with this guy. I've got my whole life laid out before me. This is not a part of that. And yet it ended up happening. So I can relate to that insta-love. The other thing that I absolutely loved is that the problems that she threw into the relationship, the way that Kira dealt with them is something I would have done. You know, and so I could really relate to that. Whereas a lot of times in paranormal romance, when I've tried to read it in the past, I'm like, why is she doing that? That is so stupid. That is just the most ridiculous thing ever. She should be doing that. And I also appreciate the fact that even though there is kind of that love triangle thing going on, it's not on Kira's part. Everybody thinks that Kira and Lowell are going to end up together because Lowell has a crush on her. But Kira never expressed interest in Lowell that way. And when Kira and Pyre end up together, everybody thinks, oh, well, Kira should be with Lowell because he's better and Pyre's not as good. Triangle thing is never with Kira. And I absolutely love that because one of the things that frustrated me so much about Twilight was that she was absolutely in love with Edward. He was her end all be all and her whole entire world. And then in the second book, while she's mourning her loss of him, she falls in love with somebody else. And to me, if it's true love, if it's that pure love, you wouldn't fall in love with somebody else so quickly. And I know they're teenagers and whatever and drama. I wasn't like that as a teenager, so I can't relate. But it really frustrated me because I honestly can't picture myself ending up with anybody else. If my husband died tomorrow, I wouldn't end up getting remarried or being with somebody else. I can't even imagine that. And so to have that rotating door relationship thing really bothered me. And the fact that Kira doesn't even consider it, that she doesn't weigh it either which way, and that she ends up really committed to Pyre and defending him despite the things that keep coming up because, well, he's a demon and he has a past. So there's these issues that come up and she has to evaluate, you know, how do I feel about this? But she actually takes the time to evaluate that. And that was another thing that bothered me about Twilight. It was like, it didn't even matter that all this stuff came up. She didn't care because he was everything and it was all that mattered. The Fire's Love, she actually takes the time to evaluate, you know, how do I feel about this? Does this change how I feel about him? And it doesn't, but she at least takes the time to consider that. And I really appreciated that. And so, yeah, so this is the first book in a 4 or 5 book series. And I really enjoyed it. It's very clean. I am comfortable with letting my kids read it. I definitely want to get the other books because, again, you know, paranormal romance is not generally something that I'm interested in reading. And to find a book that not only did I thoroughly enjoy, but I actually want to read the next book in the series is pretty huge for me. So, super excited about reading it. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer it. I'll also add a link to A Fire's Love in the comments below so that if you're interested in learning more about that, you can click on that link. And until next time, keep reading.